Hello.
Hi, Frode. Is that how
Hello.
you say your name?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Just checking messages if any from our people. No, good. You logged on earlier today, didn't you?
That's right. I was just testing everything out.
Oh, okay, cool. Because I saw it, but I was mobile, so I didn't get a chance to say, no, it's later. So that's good.
No, that's all right. Hey, thanks for the invite.
Oh, very glad you are here. Thank you. Hey, Eric. Hi, Mohit.
Hello.
So, Benja, rather. Actually, how do I pronounce your name?
Benja. Yeah,
Benja.
short for Benjamin. Parents
Okay.
just always called me it.
Hi,
Yeah.
Fruit. Hi, Eric. Hi, Benja.
I'm Mohit.
I'm Mohit.
Nice
Hi,
Let's
to meet
Eric.
let's
Ben.
give it a few more minutes, and then it'd be nice if you want to introduce yourself to the group. But where are you in the world?
I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio, USA.
The heartland of America.
That's right. The Shire. Yep.
A Shire indeed. Oh, very good. Today we don't have, let me just check what's on our own website actually. I don't think we have a very strong topic for today, which is good. We do have a, let me just click through. Yeah, oh my gosh, this is the first in August. So first of all, Eric, I did obviously get your email with the recaps.
Sure.
And even though the American talk show format is very alien to me in that way, it is shockingly good, isn't it?
That's Notebook LM. Yeah, Google Notebooks now. Yep.
Yeah, I have tried it once, and yeah, no, and also what you did was really, really good. If you don't mind, I'll put it up on the monthly summary page.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, cool. I'm going to text Mark actually, because it's going to be relevant to his work.
Hi, Peter.
Yeah, hi, Peter.
Hey guys.
Hello.
Sorry, just sending that message to Mark. Well, he's busy working on the ACM stuff, and there's a lot of nonsense with the paperwork and processes. So he's overloaded. But today, one of the things we'll do is talk about a journal in XR. So that's kind of fun. Maybe what we should do is do intros by those who have been here for a bit. And then if someone else joins, they will hear Benja last, who is the most important in this context. Eric, who are you again?
Yeah, hi. I'm Eric Rangel. I live in Delaware, and I am a retired IT professional, and also very interested in software development. Um, so I studied a lot about Ted Nelson and Doug Engelbart, and I'm hoping that we can yeah, take some of their great work and bring it forward into newer technologies like XR.
That is exactly how I would describe you, Eric. So that was pretty perfect.
Thanks.
So, Peter, since you're all right, also in America.
Yeah. Pete Demetrius. I'm in North Carolina. I retired from IBM last year after 40 some years. Software developer, architect. My nascent proclivities are to come from Smalltalk and Alan Kay and the work off of that. Worked with IBM on Smalltalk back in the 90s and when that was a hot thing. Um, and in the current realm, I sucked into this orbit by just happenstance and found this wonderful group of people to do interesting things in the interface related to how to get software, how to handle text, which software is kind of just a subset of that, I believe. And um, you wonderful people are here, and I just keep trying to catch up with what y'all are up to. Hopefully, I'll contribute more in the future.
You always ask the great questions, so very happy to have you here, Peter. Tom, since Benja is here for the first time, we're doing the basic intros, and you are next.
Oh, great. I don't have a script prepared. No pressure.
That should be
Hi,
on
I'm
your
Tom.
tombstone, right? I didn't have a script prepared.
I think that was a Far Side cartoon at one point. Um, my name is Tom Hames. I do many things simultaneously, which really makes my brain fry. I am developing a couple of different software platforms around AI, both of which are really about reasoning and thinking and connecting ideas. And I also teach at a city college here in Texas, and I use those students provide me with some very interesting insights into thinking or not thinking. Um, and I write. I have a Substack. I write other things. I've written a couple books, and I'm not as technical as maybe Peter is or Eric, but I come at it from a different direction. Been in technology for a very long time, longer than I care to admit to.
Fair enough, Tom. And you and Mohit have such bizarrely similar backgrounds today of completely different things, but
Oh, I wish I'd
really,
heard his thing.
Mohit, no, I was
But
talking about your original
No.
background. Anyway, Mohit, you're next. So
So,
please.
hi, I'm
oh,
Mohit.
that background.
But I'm joining from Mumbai, India. So I'm an independent researcher, working at at intersection of cognition, neuroscience, medium design, quantum physics. So I approach cognition through the complexity science framework and the agential realism framework of Karen Barad. And currently, I'm working on building a tool for augmenting our access, augmenting how we connect things. And so instead of the current trend, or the major epoch of augmenting our cognitive tasks and making intelligent assistants, what I'm trying to do with my work is basically how can we augment our core cognitive capabilities that form the basis of human cognition. So stuff like how do we form analogies, how do we understand things, when how can we enable uh, you to have access to a whole lot more of your stuff while you're interacting in the world. So rather than we have retrospective tools like search or AI queries, how can we bring that at the moment of your interaction?
Thank you, Mohit. And
Sounds
over to you,
amazing.
Benja.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a software engineer. Um, I finished my master's at Northern Kentucky University about 6 years ago. At the end of that, I started getting into parsers. Um, and then also like my advisor was really into small talk, and we did a few papers together. So so then I started making a couple projects. One was I'd be walking around and I wanted to be able to like text myself a note of anything that like moved me, whether I agreed with it or hated it, anything that moved me emotionally or at all. So I'd text it to myself, and that would immediately publish to a little web page, and it was just kind of lists within lists. And then that's kind of the beginning of me falling down the rabbit hole. I started getting into bullet journaling and learning about Obsidian, Rome Research. Like I found the author reader tool there. I'm on Windows primarily at home, Mac at work. Um, I don't know why it's only for Mac. It's almost a shame. But anyways, yeah. So I was at a software engineer full stack over at an insurance company in Cincinnati, Ohio, for 6 years, and then before my wife and I decided to have our second child, um, I just told her I got bit by this bug too hard. I need to take 6 to 9 months to look at this thing with two eyes. So I made like 20 different prototypes or something, just trying to figure out where the magic was, because something really hooked me about this. Felt like it was like beginning of a new renaissance or something. Something very important and interesting in this space to me. So that ended maybe like 5 months ago, and now I'm at a bank and I'm doing full stack engineering in one of their innovation centers. So we still get to do a bunch of still get to do a bunch of prototypes, but no one really cares too much about this line, this space. So yeah, that's kind of me. Uh, and then I kind of prepped a little demo of one little prototype I'd be happy to share. But happy to just kind of follow along and respond to dialogue as well.
Pro, you're mute.
Oh, sorry, I did the whole muted thing. I was shouting at my son just a few seconds ago. Yeah, I'm saying now would be a very good time for a demo. I don't know if you prepared a script, but we'd love to see the demo.
Yeah, sure.
Just checking if Tom is
Mhm.
listening.
This will take just a moment. I'm not quite used to Zoom. All right, let me know if you all can see my screen.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. Okay. Yeah, I had just finished that. Just watched it on 2X last week's session.
And that's very nice of you, but on the website we have summaries and stuff as well, right?
I heard the rap. I thought that was interesting, but I wanted just a little bit more.
Okay.
Let me make sure this is running. All right, live. Let me give just a little bit of background here. Use Obsidian. You guys can always just jump in and say anything at any point or tell me to speed it up if I need to. There's a little bit of background about me, my tech stack. Background I already kind of went into. My research interests are pretty fine grained. I think it's interesting to look at like macro discourse and all the different threads and multiple people and knowledge graphs and stuff like that. But I'm interested in increasing like the expressive power of digital text. Um, and so I think like then I kind of realized there's a difference between like the reading mode of navigating text versus the writing mode. Like those serve different purposes and also tools for thinking. You're not even writing in that type of writing. You're not even writing something for it to even be read later. You're using it as like a way to augment your thoughts, or at least I do. I can't presume how other people do it, but um, here's some, I don't know, academic terms. I got into center embeddings. Mohit, maybe this will be interesting to you. Um, I think that working memory is kind of one of the largest constraints that we have when we're processing complex concepts. How many little balls you can juggle at once. Like we just can't do that many before all of a sudden we don't know what's happening. Um, so yeah, and I got into pragmatics as well, which is just talking about, I think it's a subset of linguistics and semantics, talking about different participants in a conversation and how that turn taking works and the mechanisms there. So I feel like if we don't connect this to other people, then we're each just hoarding our own little like knowledge palace, and it's a little, uh, I don't know, self, uh, yeah, I don't know, self-congratulating. I think this has to extend to other people. Otherwise, what are we doing here? It is just my thought. But this prototype I'm going to show you kind of focuses on center embeddings. If you don't know what those are, that's when you put like one clause inside of another clause. This is not a fantastic example. I'll show more later. But like everyone can read the sentence, the train moved, right? Like we all get that. But the human brain like can't handle like 3+ layers depth there. So if you were to say like the train that the dog barked at moved, we can handle that, right? Like the the man that the woman loved drove a car or something. That's 2 layers of center embedding. Once you get to 3, it sounds absolutely crazy. the train, that the dog, that the cat chased, barked at, moved. That, at least for my brain, I'm like, that doesn't compute. I don't know what the heck's going on in that sentence. So I think very quickly we hit that constraint of working memory. And we just we lose track of it. So this demo, this little tool, helps you go past that constraint.
Can I
Hopefully
just,
that's good enough. Yeah,
that's
please.
really, thank you. That's really, really interesting because that's quite clearly a non-linear issue. It becomes a triangle in a sense. Or obviously it's a hierarchy, but it becomes a different shape of what we need to hold in our working memory. So I think that's a really fascinating observation. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
It's not just, 5 to 7 items. It is the levels of relationship. So yeah, very cool. Thank you.
Yeah, if you want to look at everything I've learned about that stuff is, a little bit from like Noam Chomsky stuff, but also Edward Gibson at MIT. He's done a lot of research into that. I'm going to show you one of his favorite examples, or his lab's favorite examples. He's got a good podcast interview, I think, with Lex Friedman. Okay. So this is it. Let me just, for my own ego's sake, let me give some caveats. This is something I never really polished. I don't even have backspace supported currently, so you're going to have to be subjected to pretty horrendous spelling. And this is also trying to write at the speed of thought kind of a thing. So you're going to have to jump into my brain for kind of a second. Let's see. Also, this is writing tech, which it's not necessarily reading tech. So I'm hoping this transfers to some extent, but you're going to have to imagine that you're kind of writing a little bit to kind of feel what I'm feeling, at least until I publish something like this. I think that's about all the context I want to give. Quick example of center embedding before I jump into like the real example. This is the one from Edward Gibson. It's you all able to see the text all right?
What is the text at the, okay, I'll ask questions after.
Okay. Yeah, but feel free to jump in. Okay. I don't know how that all hit you. I've only shown it to a couple friends here in Cincinnati, but that's an example of a center embedded, a multi-layer. Like we went more than 3 there, right? It's almost like that storybook where it's like in a napping house where everyone was sleeping. If anyone has young kids, there was a granny, and there was a child. There was a flea ultimately that bites the cat, that thumps the dog. So the serial killer hid the body. Basically, I'm just trying to like set different layers for each of those different clauses. So even though they're center embedded, I still want to be able to read that top layer sensibly. So if you squint, you can see the biggest text is just the serial killer hid the body. But then if you were to go a layer deeper, you can see the serial killer who the FBI agent scared into action hid the body. And then you can go further within, if that makes sense.
This is so different from the way I would think, and I'm really very happy because of that. So
cool.
The way I would think about this would be the serial killer would kind of be a node that would have relationship to these other items, but that's kind of
sure.
like whatever shape. You're specifically nesting them. And I think that with XR, which is what we're really looking at in the community now, not exclusively, but predominantly, nesting becomes really, really important because it's very easy to make a mess. And if you make a mess in your real space, it doesn't take that long until you have way too much information there. So to be able to do the overview level and to dig in and out as you want is really important. And this is a very different way of looking at it. So thanks.
Yeah, sure thing. I've got one other example that kind of like says what the tool does, if you all will indulge me. So, I mean, basically how it works is just these are open parentheticals or these are closing the parenthetical. So when I click the open parenthesis, it starts up a new layer. And then when I do close parentheses, so it takes a little bit of like, that's part of the parsing work. And it makes it actually pretty inaccessible to someone that doesn't want to learn a programming language in order to use this tool, So that's one of the major things I would love to get you all's thoughts on. It's like, how do you make this stuff accessible? How do you make this abstract stuff simple? Is just a consistent question for me. And then also navigation. It's a tough thing. All right, so this tool helps researchers really any external processors provided their to get experimental with their writing process. And quick pause here to say, basically what I want to do is like, I'm thinking about almost if you're indulging a rabbit hole, right? Like you're jumping off of a certain train of thought and you're going down a certain path. I want to have little pitons that I can like clip to the side of a mountain or to the side of the cave as I go down, so that once I get too far down the rabbit hole, I can just close parenthetical, close, and zip back to, jump right back on the train at different levels. That to me is what I think that's the magic of this, if there's any magic to this. So yeah, provided they're willing to get experimental with their writing process. Or avid note takers. So constantly, I don't know how you all work in your brain when you read something or when you're writing, but you kind of have to recontextualize yourself. Oh yeah, what am I typing? This tool helps researchers, but really any external processors. Oh, nice, talk some more there. Or avid note takers, of which I'm one. Probably so are.
It reminds me of stretch text. And so we've seen examples of that in some of Frode's prototypes where you open it up. But maybe this would help people write a stretch text document. I mean, I use
That's an honor to be compared to Frode.
Yeah. I look at it like you do with outliners. Do you write structured text, or do you do a stream of consciousness and afterward mine it into structure, like dictate?
No, it's structure.
Yeah,
it's structure within. But I was just tired of when I was in like Obsidian or some word processor. I was tired of like counting the amount of parentheticals, so I'd leave myself these little breadcrumbs. But I wanted it to be able to I wanted to jump back to it, not have to do so much kind of like tracking in my head. So this is just a way to kind of do that.
So I agree with Eric. It reminds me also a little bit of stretch text and of course of Vannevar Bush's trails, going back and cutting the trails and so on. It's
I'll have
very
to look
different
through stuff. I'll have to look into stretch text.
Yeah, stretch text is fascinating. It's the thing is, when you get into the hypertext community or any kind of community like this, there will be a lot of discussions on terminology. What is really stretch text and what is really this and so on, which can be good fun. It can also be a bit anyway, it can be all kinds of things, but yeah, definitely trails and stretch text also. But the new thing to me is also very much the simple way to write it with just brackets and the visualization that it results in. You don't have to use a specific tool to put it together. So, I mean, I could imagine an author having a view now where it says compress all bracketed statements,
Sure.
you know, something like that. But what you're showing here on top, that kind of hierarchical visual thing is really quite cool.
Thanks. Yeah. All right, I'll finish this out. Want to. See, so this is just every person's different. I'm almost gluttonous with enjoying to run down a rabbit hole. I like following that, whatever the interest in the moment is, that's just a step ahead. So with writing, you're kind of following it. Like now I'm kind of jumping into, how these things, I kind of arrest these previous trains of thought and I say, how does text navigation during reading differ from text navigation while writing? And again, please forgive that I haven't implemented backspace. And then you can just flow down, as far as you want. You can just ramble on and on if you want. Necessarily to you all to jump into my head to that degree, but ultimately, I think reading's a little bit more of a passive mode of text navigation. You all are just following this word, then you read that word, if that makes sense. For writing, I'm projecting out. It's the same when we're speaking to some degree, like imagining the clause that we're immediately producing, right? This gets so abstract so quick. It's pretty tough to communicate, in my experience at least.
So, because obviously you're a coder and you built this, I have to ask the question that's so
Yeah.
fashionable. Have you started doing any vibe coding?
Yeah, I kind of do it professionally now, which is strange because it's for a bank, but that's where the industry is using Claude Opus, and
You said
just
you use a Mac at work and at home you use Windows, right?
That's right.
So I've started coding in Xcode, which is of course the Mac development environment using Claude. And as
Sure.
these guys have heard 3 billion times, it is utterly transformative. So yeah, it's a thing.
Yeah. So GPT, I think it was 3, helped me out with some of this stuff, but it kind of trips over the parser a little bit. But that's before like anthropic supremacy, model supremacy for development, at least. So I have Claude Code, but I haven't revisited this stuff. I just had my second child. He's 3.5 months old.
Oh,
I have to deprioritize some of these
so how old is
hobby
your other
interests.
child?
Just turned 3. So I got a 3-year-old and then a 3.5-month-old.
So yeah, you're not busy at all. Yes, sure.
I got full 8 hours, I'm sure, last night. Yeah, no, we were up.
That's wonderful. Wonderful.
Unwieldy,
My son
undecided.
is 9 and he's upstairs now. I just picked him up from a code camp. And he was
Nice.
using Scratch, which is, of course, got a history that goes all the way back to Alan Kay. So I thought that was quite cute.
Very cool.
Eric, yeah. There is something related to this that I'd like to show, but I think you should go first, actually. Benja, anything else before you wrap up and wrap yourself around our brains?
No, that's it. Thank you so much for the time. Thanks for letting me show this to you, and I appreciate any thoughts or critique at all. I could never figure out if this was art or science or what. So
With
thanks.
lots of respect, I don't think that's an interesting question. I think it's all of the above, but it'll take me at least a week to figure out an intelligent comment back.
And
It's
all
all-
good science is art.
It's all intertwingled, right?
Oh,
Okay. Love it.
look what I bought.
I can't see it.
Ah, that's great.
The other one's better.
Yeah, of course it is.
That was shot directly at teachers.
Yeah, no, it's super cool. Okay, yeah, do a demo, and then I want to show you guys something in the headset that goes kind of back to this. Right.
Okay,
Cool.
so can you see Game of Life sculpture?
Yeah, we can.
Yep. Okay, so I was playing around with Claude and Xcode, just trying to imagine what a knowledge sculpture would look like. And I really wanted to have these side panels. So this is based on the Game of Life, just prototyping what a zigzag structure could look like in 3D. And I want these side panels to walk with me. It doesn't work in the simulator right now, but that's the vision, that it would show me what the current level of the knowledge sculpture is. So now I'm just pressing the W key. So we start with an R pentomino, and then we can see how it's connected to the generations behind it. So like in Zigzag, you have the three axes, and yeah, I had to draw this little pipe between the same cells. So like a green cell is a newly born cell, and then it survives into the next generation. But imagine that these were really like coat hooks for knowledge, and then on the side panels, as you're moving, you could see more information, or you could tap a different cell and get more context about it, but you would see the relationships as well. I'm just not sure about all these connections visually, if that makes sense. But the other concept I want to mention is that it should be lazy loading. So like here, there are two more left. At this point, if it detects I'm over here, it should lazy load another generation behind it. And then you can yeah, navigate at your own pace, and it would load the z-axis, but you have plenty of space in the X and Y. So this is just the first attempt at thinking about what this would look like in 3D. Okay.
You could probably get rid of those.
Don't stop sharing, man.
Oh, okay, sure.
You could probably get rid of those vertical the pipes that lead from one to the other, because visual space kind of tells you that center one is the same as the center one over there. But because those are
Yeah.
kind of, I think, a little bit too much clutter for what you want to see. You see the new ones pop into
Mm-hmm.
existence.
Yeah.
Just from a visual design perspective, is like those pipes are marginally interesting once you get past two layers. And okay, I understand what's going on. You got spatial memory, works more intuitively, I think.
Yeah, if it's obvious what is behind it, that.
Because you
But
keep the
see,
same layout, and it's just, oh, this next one and the next one, because the way life works.
So
okay.
That's also good for any other kind of time sequence kind of thing. You get like Frodo was signing, you get all these lines spinning everywhere, and they cut through your head, and just not.
I understand that. Yeah.
But you do have a
So,
timeline if you look at it from the side that way, and that can be kind of interesting to see a timeline with the line.
Yeah, you should be able to turn them on and off, I would say, would be
Yeah.
the better way to do it. Or to turn
Yeah.
them off, or
Yeah,
have them fade out as you move along or something like that. But I do think so. The reason I think the lines are a little more necessary is that you don't really have a orientation in space that's
mhm.
super clear. I don't know. I mean, maybe it's the background with the TV and the painting and all that stuff. That's, maybe the solution is to come up with a grid pattern or something like that allows you to more easily see the connection from one layer to the next. Because right now it's just sort of, if you took the lines out, I think it would just be a little too free floating.
Yeah,
Well,
go ahead.
sorry, Eric,
Yeah.
you're probably going to say the same thing. That is the background of the simulator. So what this is doing is acting as a stand-in for a fully augmented reality application. And to that end, there are some other things about it, like the fact that obviously as you go through that wall, there's sort of void on the other side, and that's because you know, augmented reality apps are not, for the most part, meant to be sort of experienced on the go, walking a significant distance. And so coming up with some mechanism that allows you to do some perambulation, some locomotion, and some manipulation of the view is important. The other thing, I think this is visionOS, or is this another texture to Peter's point about focus that you may have the ability to leverage is highlight region stuff. So there are ways to make materials and objects that are actually completely invisible until you look at them, or if you look in those regions. So I work on the web, and you can use SVG paths as highlight regions, interaction regions, and you don't get to know when a user is doing it, but you get to define when they look at a place in a place, what it looks like. And so that could be an interesting thing to leverage in order to be able to kind of reduce the sort of the level of overload of those things. Sorry, I stood on other people talking, but I was excited to get those things out.
I appreciate your feedback. The other thing you may not have seen are these side panels, which I would want to travel with me as I walk forward and show something related to the level that I'm looking at. So I don't know how to get the simulator to move them with me, but that's what I would want here. So like here, it would show me generation 2, this would be generation 3, and I'd want lazy loading of the data as I move forward, if that's possible. Yeah, okay. It's just a first attempt at prototyping a vision for a knowledge sculpture.
So
yeah, no, that's really exciting.
If you don't mind, Eric, please put it on Git and give me the link so I can run it.
Yeah, I will.
Cool, because what I'm going to do, I'm going to share my screen with you now as a follow-up to that. Hang on. So this is a lot less, I don't know, read all my secrets, why don't you? But mirror my view.
Just a brief note on that last one, if you don't mind. It'd be interesting. I don't know if anyone follows ground news at all, but you can see like kind of how the right is reporting on something versus the left. Be interesting to see news articles if you had two different streams there, Eric. And then you could almost see I don't exactly know the use case, but it's kind of fascinating to see the timing of some of these things as opposed to just the raw count of like, this is more getting reported here or that. Because I think sometimes, unfortunately, news articles are reactionary. I don't know, just a use case.
Or how they feed off of each other. News is so often a game of telephone, and so they copy each other and spin it and things like that. It would be fun to watch how that morphs in live sense.
Yeah, that's a very good case study. Can you see this view?
Yes, yeah.
So the reason I'm showing this now is because of the sim that Eric had to use being 2D faking it. So what we have here is a conference proceedings. So the inner sphere or cylinder rather is the papers that are now this. I only built this today, so it's very, very rough. But what I want you to look at is actual spacing in the room, like Brandel taught me a long time ago how, I'm now purposefully dancing a little bit because you get the depth perception, right? Which you don't get from the simulation that Eric showed. And then to go to what Peter was talking about, lines can be very, very annoying. There are some here that produce a huge amount of lines like this. And it is a problem if you have it all the time, but they can also generate shapes. By the way, this is one of the few billboarded systems that I've built. You can see here it follows me. something that everything else has been against. But now that this is entirely coded with Claude in Xcode, the overhead for doing a prototype is roughly the same as the overhead of doing something live, which is absolutely, I think, changing our entire intellectual life, isn't it? So just as a last comment on this as well, you will notice that many of these are physically outside of the room. So you can't always expect to walk to every level, but you can still have it as ambient information and then have a mechanism to pull it towards you. But there is a specific probe that I want to do with you guys. Now, but launch this other one. I'm going to share screen again. So this, some of you see the beginning of this. It's the atlas thing, the inter-atlas. And what I would like to show for you to think about, I'm going to now share the screen again, is just wait for it to come up. Make them a little darker. Because obviously spatial information fits in a space, right? That's kind of obvious. Let's see if it even launches. There it is. You can all see it, right?
Yep.
Yep.
So having played with this a lot lately and just been honest in the sense of dealing with this as a globe rather than pretending it has anything to do with text, the questions become, how can it have anything to do with text? So notice the clouds are floating above the Earth. Right, it's actually extruded as well. And Eric, your menu system earlier, you wanted two things next to you, right? So I developed this thing here, which actually works really well. It actually comes up only when you want it. So I'm going to do intro and settings. Really available. So let's look at actually, I'm going to turn off the clouds first. So I go up here and I look at clouds, turn them off. Boom, that's gone. So here's the terrain relief. Because if you have it at 1x, at this size, the Earth is completely flat. So, but you can live extrude. Do you see that?
Oh, you have terrain. Holy cow.
Right.
Like topography.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of mad. The headset power now, it's just absolutely incredible. So we can do the same with the clouds. These are obviously live clouds.
Will it track the missiles flying across the Middle East?
No comment. So here, you see, we can move the clouds up and down the altitude because they're normally about 12 kilometers high. We can choose to emphasize that too. So you get a 3D space. But what's really nice about it is, I'm wondering now, because we've had two examples, one in text and one in, let's put it fake spatial, how we can use this kind of spatiality for our knowledge, not just geography. Because already here we have this function that I think some of you have seen. We can choose to compare any city, not let's say country, or let's say population density. That's one view. That's a bit weird. I'm going to turn the clouds off. I'm going to do, why is that? Oh, okay. I'm going to go to the settings again. There's right now you can see rice production by country. So you see, unsurprisingly, here you can see Beijing showing, well, Hong Kong and Macau showing a lot. So these are extruded based on that. Let's just do something completely different. We'll do oceans by water volume. So you can see which oceans have it. And the colors indicate the amount as well as the shading does. But it does get even more interesting than this. So we'll clear that. And now we'll zoom out. So now we have satellites. These are live satellites of every commercial satellite in the world moving at real-time speed. Can you see them over Egypt?
Mm.
Why can't we figure out a way to spatialize our knowledge? Like we have some knowledge here, and if we go far out, you see this is a band of satellites as well? Because then we can start doing things like this. I pull out another, let's look at the space station, James Webb, Hubble. So now they become large models, just so we can see what they look like. So that's kind of fun. But a friend saw this, and he says, why don't you illustrate near crashes? So here are two satellites that are labeled, and you can see this is not going so well. Because of the scale, they actually made it. Let's look at this one. You will see here the details, the speed, all of that is here. Look at it from this side. You know, this is one type of information spatially. Should be able to have different kinds, right?
It's like intersecting time series.
So that didn't go well. I did have a time series for something else. I mean, if we now go out, so this is why I'm really fascinated by the nesting that you showed earlier. So now we're literally nesting the universe. We have Milky Way around, got the sun, got the moon, got the Earth, right? So we can summon things by this menu. So now we want to see Jupiter. Here's Jupiter. Let's go to Uranus. So I'm really happy with this style of menu, because when you're typing, you probably see it a lot. But in most knowledge stuff, unless you're moving a thing, your secondary hand isn't all that active. So it's quite safe. So let's go back to satellites. Let's go back to Earth. And this is the final thing I wanted to show you guys. If I now zoom in, we go inside the planet, we can see the layers. Whoops, I didn't want to show you that yet. The different layers of the planet, right? And while you're in it, it's actually totally fine. Probably looks like horrible stuff on the display. But if I now go, see what I mean? The different volumes, and they can contain different kinds of information, and it feels totally fine walking around in it. I think we can learn from this kind of spatial stuff how to add our information, because if you now look at the really rough augmented library, yeah, so if it just, because we're operating with journals, that's the key thing. This is what I just showed you at the beginning, right? It looks really sparse because it's a rough thing, but it's beginning to try to figure out how space could work. See if I can return to normal view.
I would say the difference there, though, is that you do have hard data, shall I say it, you know, that is driving that illustration. In other words, you can move through it, but there's a limited number of ways in which you can look at it. One of the problems with transferring that to, I see two big problems with transferring that to information or ideas. One is that you have to jump from describing to creating. You know, the people who created that are basically describing the environment and using the more advanced tools, but they're still describing the environment, which is a fairly straightforward task. But then you have to map out the landscape of creation that is completely unmapped, so to speak. And you know, we may not know everything about the universe, but you know, you can put the things in there that we do know, and then you can send people into a black hole when they go somewhere you don't know. The other issue is that once you have that, there's going to be a lot of disagreement about what to prioritize and how to show things as being connective. I mean, I think one of the things we have to think about is how, Vannevar Bush's description of basically people picking up their breadcrumbs and sharing them with other people. That to me is where the real value lies, is having the ability to do that. And I I want to see the connection between the molten core of the Earth and Jupiter, because there is a connection, right? So I want to see that line and be able to say, the reason this is important is because Jupiter develops differently than the Earth because of its positioning in the solar system, et cetera, et cetera. Therefore, the Earth has a molten core that moves at a different speed and generates a magnetic field. And that allows certain things to happen on Earth, which are impossible on Jupiter.
Yes.
And so that would be, I figured this out. Or another one that's very relevant, of course, is comparing it to Mars. Why is it going to Mars so crazy? Because it doesn't have these basic characteristics of the Earth. It doesn't really have a magnetic field. It's 10 times easier to fix Earth than it is to try to live on Mars. And this is why. Here's my connections. This is the reasoning loop that I've developed. And I'm going to give this to Brandel or Frode or somebody, and you guys will understand that connection implicitly because I've taken the time to research that point. But I want to be able to physically give it to you in some way, or representationally, let me put it that way, give it to you.
So what's so exciting, Tom, is I think those are exactly the question. Hi, Astral. Hi, Patrick.
Hi.
They really are the right questions. And I want to highlight a couple of things. Number one, I programmed that. I don't know how to program. This is entirely 100% Claude sitting next to me in Xcode. It's mind-blowing. Right? There is so much more I didn't even show you. For instance, you can choose any country in the world, and it'll show you relationship with other countries through arrows, like people going from Mexico to America or Europe. With a slider, you can see how it's changed over time. I'm currently building one that's a couple of 100 million years of the shape of the world. You can have a slider, you can see how the continents moved and stuff. So part of this is, isn't it cool what I built? Because it's built in such a manner. It's also, and Tom, you're so right on so many points. Number one, physical space has a coordinate system, so it can go on top of each other. When it comes to the relationship with the core of the Earth and Venus or Mars, it's absolutely doable. If we can think of a way to show that, it can be done. I mean, on this thing, I've also added shipwrecks because somebody wanted it, didn't take long. We have the opportunity, and also, as I said before, when Deanie and I worked on Sloan stuff, we were sitting in a chair with a space because this was before Brandel introduced his headset. So we didn't really have the opportunity for AR. We were thinking VR, and there you have to be careful not to bounce into walls. But you just saw me inside our own Earth, walking around, minimal transparency to the world, but it's my room. So that means that I get absolutely the benefit of VR without hitting anything because I can see just enough. So that is completely new. That is something that 2 years ago I could not have imagined. It's something that I had to build, and it works. So when we're now talking about the information side of this, currently all the bits I have are very hard-edged visually. I think it'll be more interesting to get them more organic. I mean, the fact that I have thousands of satellites around the world, all rendered as metal spheres, come on, that's nuts. I have a view all the way out to have the Milky Way, and the Milky Way is very large, got billions of stars. It renders 5 million stars rock solid in space, 5 million points. So when you see
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's absolutely mind-blowing, right? When you see the Earth, do you want it transparent or not? Do you want things extruded? Do you want real-time clouds? Do you want shading? Do you want all of this is possible? The only thing that is holding us back goes back to that early 90s Apple commercial. It's the size of ideas and the strength of our dedication, something like that. Our imagination has to rush to keep up with these things. And the questions you ask, Tom, really pushing this into knowledge rather than just visualization, it's exactly the questions I want to pursue here.
So let me get this right. Is that basically everything you've done so far is pretty much vibe coded?
Who was talking? The video was weird. Was that Patrick?
Oh,
Yeah,
Patrick, yeah.
Patrick.
Yeah, 100%. And I was talking to one of my very close friends today. Finally got a chance to talk to her about this. And the summary to her was the opportunity is amazing.
It
But
is.
I'm still not a programming kind of brain. So when it comes to the right kinds of details and stuff, I will still mess it up and have to go through things. But
Hmm.
thankfully, Claude is quite patient, has no emotion, and doesn't get insulted when I say, "Can we do it again?" Right? But yes, it's
Right.
100% vibe coded, if
Yeah.
that's the word we're
Can,
going to use.
can I share just a short journey with you that's kind of in this route?
Yeah, please.
So I do a lot of plotter drawing, and I've basically machine drawing since about 2003, been with about 1994, and have some ties to these artists called the algorists. And so anyway, I really focusing on this a lot this summer, and there's an artist by the name of Vera Molnar who was one of the earlier pioneers in that, and she was very interested in Durer's Melancholia, which explored the magic square. And so that's the context. So I went and I said, okay, I want to make a piece that, has visual connections between, the, but between the numbers on the magic square and the sequencing and that sort of thing, and then give me something that's aesthetically pleasing. I said, I got that. And I got that in processing. And I did that. Give me a 3 by 5 array of these, connect them, and I mean, I'm decent at Java, and so except for it gave me pretty much exactly what everything I wanted, except for some issues in the setup with give me duplicate things, whatever. That was great, and I've been doing artworks off of that. But I don't know whether anybody's seen these little things, all these little Arduino-like boards, ASP32s, and this little company that's been doing Matrix Digital Rain, as a little keychain or whatnot. So I looked at that and I said, okay, this basically this ESP32 with this display on it, and then all of a sudden now I'm playing around with it. I realized that it's basically just playing a Matrix Digital Rain library stock out of the Arduino library. And so, but anyway, what I'm I've also made animations of this Melancholia sketch that I'm doing, which is in processing. I said, okay, I want to take this animation that's running on my Macintosh. And then I want to go translate that into MicroPython for the Arduino IDE and deploy that upon this little 1.9-inch ESP32, X number of cores and that sort of thing, and play it like that. It says, no problem. And right at that, and all I did is I just basically set up the environment, put in the code, and at this point, it isn't perfect, but starting to do it. To me, that sort of fluidity of ability and that sort of thing between hardware and languages and that sort of thing is something that I just haven't had access to.
I'm writing a quote here in the side margin, fluidity of ability. I absolutely love that, Patrick.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm going to ask Benja now to do the end of his demo again, both for Randall and Astral and Patrick, but also because I think it pulls us back while conceptually is so similar to the other stuff. I'm not sure if you're talking, Benja. Oh, there we go.
Sorry, I need to, yeah, unmute, reshare. Yeah, it's great to connect with you all. I'd be eager for it'd be fun to try out you all's projects and for you all to try out mine. Um, but for anyone that wasn't here at the beginning of the meeting, and I'll probably need to leave in about 15 minutes to get back to work, a long lunch here. But basically, it's a way to nest, like deeply nest parentheticals, basically in line. Um, and so you can still have this top level statement of this tool helps researchers who want to process complex concepts. But the way kind of do it is be like,
Just to make it clear, guys, the text at the bottom of the screen is written with brackets, and that's what's doing the nesting that you can see on top. So it's visualizing the nestings.
that's right. Yeah, that's each new layer is driven off of an open parenthetical or their writing process. Or if you want to close it, you get to kind of swing back to exactly where you jumped off from. So you get to arbitrarily indulge in kind of rabbit hole defense league. And then you can just kind of zip back to your top thread.
So I'm wondering now, one of the things you talked about before we even started this stuff, Randall, is going for a walk outside with AR glasses or something. And while working on the solar system, which is hundreds of meters in real size in the headset, literally trying to get out of our little office boxes, so to speak. Something like this, how it could be spatialized, even if it stays text, which of course I would be very amenable to. How might that be done and how might that be useful? Because a lot of arguments contain subordinate clauses, not just in law, but academia too, right? And some of this is totally fine to do node-based, but some of it really does benefit from the hierarchy.
Yeah, this
And you
this
can
is a
also
really
rename.
neat. Sorry, go ahead, Benja.
Please go ahead.
No, I was just going to liken it to a couple other projects, but I'd like to see more of what it is that you sort of do and what you think with this already.
That's kind of the whole thing. I'd be very eager to hear. I'm ready with my pencil. I'd love to hear the other projects.
Sure. Well, I mean, it's a lot like telescopic
I
text, if you've seen that one before.
have, yeah.
IMAT. And then something that I did a few years ago was take my reading of visual syntactic text trees or visual text syntactic text formatting. It's on my CodePen, and it breaks sentences down into their constituent parts. I'll get the link for it.
I think I was just looking at that. This one,
Okay,
right?
yeah. But what I like about yours is that the ability to add parentheticals means that there's a specific capacity to guide and direct that as a visual structure. So to that end, it reminds me of a lot of, if you've listened to this before, then you will have heard of Bob Horn. And he did murals. We did some cool stuff with that. But one of the thing that he actually made his money on was sort of telling people that they should put headings on every paragraph, basically. I mean, there's more to his stuff than that, but he's got a book called Mapping Hypertext. And the idea there is that things should describe themselves, sort of very similar to Frode's idea um, of visual meta in that regard. But the thing that this allows you to do is really, really fluidly and freely go back and forth between text and text about text, and sort of enclose and contain those things. Something that web presentation systems like Prezi have done a very good job of sort of inciting a want and a desire for people to be able to kind of construct these annotated and nested spaces. But I think Prezi and many of these other things are too difficult to wrangle for that to be a really practical sort of mechanism whereby you do stuff. So one thing I would say is that I would write different things with this. But I think that or maybe and anything that could actually be good. People got into outlining and bullet points and things like that in the 20th century. But one of the challenges that comes out of outlining and bullet pointing is like, how deep do you go? What is meant in one section versus another, and the way that these things get progressively smaller also sort of leans toward a lot of Ken Parlin's work and concepts around zooming user interfaces, or ZUIs, that I think that once you have a corpus that's kind of structured in this way, that you could really do some really interesting introspection and exploration and navigation of. So thanks. That's probably all I need to rant to you about.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
So if you don't mind, I'll take over the screen.
Please.
Thank you. So so Mark Anderson, who most of you know, who I keep talking about, is just overloaded with ACM stuff. And he gave me data of previous ACM proceedings. I know most of you are academics, but just for the clarity of the recording as well, most of academic output is connected, either published in a journal or in proceedings, which are papers from a conference, right? So that means that, just going to get rid of the background there. So that means that a natural framing or box or size or volume of a lot of academic stuff is the proceedings or journal, even though the individual articles are normally PDFs, which of course is horrible in itself. So if we look here now, this is what we saw in the headset. So Mark has given me cleaned up data for all the hypertext ones. And we have all kinds of good stuff inside here. So we have 2,000 journals. Some of them don't have a lot of, no, we don't, no, 2,000 papers in the journals. We have about 40 journals. We have this data now, and the Future of Text series of books, Benja, I hope you will want to be part of the next one, we can produce in the same manner. So the Hypertext Conference is going to be in September. I'm writing 2 brief papers on them. They're due this coming week. I haven't written anything. One is a demo paper. So I'm wondering what kind of ideas we may have here, as in super cool, forget useful for now, just super cool ways, putting on a headset. And then something you may not know, the papers from the conference you get on the first day. Before that, they're not available. Suddenly you have about 30 papers you have to read, evaluate, get a clue about to decide what sessions to go to. So it's a bit mad, right? Mm-hmm. So imagine you put on a headset and you have all of these. Considering the power of the coding we've seen earlier, and we all know about, how do we want to present those papers in the coolest, most fun ways for people to go through them? Mm-hmm. Not a rhetorical question, people.
No, I was just
necessarily
reaching for the unmute button. So, I mean, if it's there, but something I would say to that is we recently, big tech is tightening its belts, but we still get free soda. It's just that we only have the one fridge on the one floor now instead of one on every floor. But one of the things that they did is, instead of just having a fridge that you open the door to, it's still free, but you got to press a button and then the arm comes down like it's a normal vending machine. And I don't know how many people get a soda from that machine once or twice a day, every day of their lives. But I do not think that the user experience is designed for those people. I think it's designed for the people who will very occasionally get a soda once, maybe twice a week, rather than sort of going there and not only like getting one once or twice, but also having to wait in line behind like 3 or 4 people also doing the same thing. This is to say that the kinds of drama that you can add to an experience that somebody is expected to do once or twice in a week is very, very different to something that somebody needs to repeat maybe several dozen times in a single day, of which, you know, I would expect navigating the sort of the paper syllabus for the ACM hypertext thing. So I would be careful about sort of whiz bang features and things because they get so tired. They get so tired. Sorry, go ahead, Broden.
Well, this is all your fault, obviously, Brandel, having been the one who tried to break me into this, but I don't agree with you at all, except for in reality. In reality, you're right, but I don't think reality is that interesting right now. I think what's much more interesting is provocations, right? Because when someone puts on the headset and views author map the first time, 9 out of 10 times the single first word is always wow.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Because you can move this from here to there. So of course, the second thing, we as community, we have to take, as I like to say, go from wow to work. So in reality, I agree with you, Brandel. But in terms of inspiring other people to compete with us, which would be ideal, that's why I think we should do something that is just, holy moly, this is so cool. And then later on, so, but why don't we make it a bit more practical? Practical can come later. That's
so I actually don't think that those are mutually exclusive either. You know, one of the things that about one, yeah, well, the details matter, right? So, like in Vision, you know, you look at your hand and the start menu comes up, and you turn it over and you get Control Center, and it can be as difficult as it is to try to explain that to a first-time user, and they can spend all the time in the world sort of marveling at how the circle knows where their hand is or whatever. But it's also very fast. And same thing with iPhone and swipe up to go home. These things are made out of dynamics and constraints and other things that mean that people can kind of make as much of a meal of them as they need to. And also for the people who are just bored of it and need to get to their notifications can do so without sort of being interrupted. So I do agree, drama is good, and making sure that those things sustain the 10th view as well as the first view is a reasonable goal to try to keep in mind, which is not always obvious when you're trying to market something. You know, the possible exception is marketing websites, and then the only people that you're annoying by putting a 30-second intro on the page is the people doing the QA for it. They do get cross with you, though.
Yes. So you put on the headset, let's say an average proceedings, would you all agree, is about 30 papers, not usually more, right? And we know everything about that paper, and we can define what we mean by everything. In addition to the baked-in stuff of title, dates, their own keywords, abstract, we can, of course, choose to have these pre-processed for concepts and all of that stuff. We know what they cite and who, well, not who cites them because they're fresh papers in this context. I'm going to push a little bit more on the sphere or cylinder because it's just so cool. But we should probably do something more like what Eric did, where you have a timeline, because as you've also seen in author, you can have all the papers next to each other, and then you can have them spaced like this. And they have very different affordances. Most of the time, as Fabienne suggested when we started this loan thing, just take a magazine or a book and just put all the pages on a wall, just tape them up. And it's actually quite a convenient way to get an overview. Most of the time, 2D is fine, right? No question, just big 2D. What are the shapes that we want to see? I mean, Tom, you are working on knowledge navigation. So what navigation should we see? Well, you're looking at concepts. Patrick, you are on the art side of this. What are the kind of things we can dream about?
Actually, so before, sorry, unless somebody has something that they want to respond with, I would pose something to Benja about your parentheticals. Do you think you could write systems that would allow people to jump out? Imagine if somebody was writing with this, that rather than simply producing a new document, there was the ability to kind of carve off and apportion and summarize and entitle other things. So, one of the challenges, Rhoda, with your papers is that if they're mostly just verbal, then a galley view of all of them isn't phenomenally descriptive. And what you need is level of detail kind of summarizations in order to be able to kind of hone in on specific sort of regions or declare certain sort of locations to be semantically relevant. So one of the things that you might be able to do is do your highlighting and annotation in something like Benja's tool by um, by reading and then sort of concluding certain things and being able to kind of tidy up and render that space legible. And by by um, by coming out from the text rather than going into it in the way that it is sort of by necessary by default when you're working with a green field. I think the challenge is like what is the structure, what are the finding devices, what are the metaphors that you're sort of navigating by, and so level of detail is a sort of a critical component that a lot of this starts for me with. Sorry,
We're
I
talking
jumped
about
all over everybody.
like a semantic zoom almost, like in the 3D space. If you were to like stand very far back, and forgive me, I'm new to VR stuff, but if you're very far back, you see maybe like, I mean, you said it's 35 papers, you see 3 to 5 groupings. Like, if forced to an LLM or a person, like would say, of these 35 papers, there's basically 3 groups that we can intelligently put these into. And once you could kind of be like, oh, I don't care too much about that group or that group, but I like this group. You kind of enter into that space and then you get, I don't know, a summarization of an abstract, which sounds dirty, which sounds terrible. The abstracts are already like small, but you try to have a good faith second level depth, maybe just the titles. And then you could go in. You could also do something like simple Wikipedia, if anyone's ever seen that. Like it's a version of Wikipedia, but it's like using only the 250 most common words. That sounds amazing.
One of the things that happened when I was doing the Earth stuff, I kind of took a mental break to do it because it's so different from our quote unquote real work here, was there what I have all, oh, I forgot to show you, I have all the air routes in the world. So you can see all the airplane routes. So they're higher up if they have more volume and they're thicker and they go more orange, just like the extrusions. So you can see some, anyway, point is the airports are absolutely tiny. They're just the 3-letter acronyms or whatever it's called, right? So tiny. And I thought about making it bigger, but you can actually go really, really close. So when you're talking about Prezi and things like that, this is real, in a sense, real world virtual Prezi. So when you're talking about semantic zooming, yes. But when you have a system that can render 5 million dots accurately, you don't actually have to hide anything. You don't have to hide it in the sense that it pops in. It can be there, but in a different way. So I'm wondering, the Earth is round, and that's maybe not a good shape for knowledge. Maybe a cube or a different kind of a shape where we choose what the facets mean. Maybe we look, this is something we talked about during Sloan. Maybe you go inside it, and then it has a certain ordering, and it can be by time, by people, all kinds of stuff. Maybe you make it small and you see it in a different way. These are still difficult things to build, but they are now achievable without a multi-million-dollar budget.
Right. I mean, consider this. I mean, yeah. I mean, I'm of course I'm obsessed with Daniel Brown's Noodle Box. But the thing is, I think about the idea of visual schema that wind up, ordering knowledge. So, say for example, it's like imagine, I don't know, sort of like a chessboard, but colored, or maybe even a cube, but with each side having, a grid, but it's spatial, in other words, and colored. And so the thing is like spatial, the depth or height of that particular, facet might talk about, how many papers there are for, a given piece. And it's like, and then, the color delineates something. And then, So do you see what I mean? Then you could click on maybe that fast, and then it goes into maybe that's maybe that's a symposium, and then that then pops into another recursive schema of something similar that that pops in there. I mean the other thing that I'm also, I mean, one of the greatest UIs that I ever used was Naturalficial's The Brain when it was web-based. When you could do it web-based. I mean, you had that central node and you had everything. You had a couple different, ways that you could have it representing like meta nodes, and then each of the ones going off on the sides or on the top, and you'd click on the one and click on whatever you did, and then that's centered, and then everything else arranged itself you know, contextually to that, to the links that you put on it. And the thing that I loved about that was the fact that, it didn't give me two or three or four, levels, out. I mean, it'd be maybe be interesting if it gave me two levels out. But the thing is, it kept itself concise. It gave me a couple of different schemas for ordering knowledge. And the thing is that, it remained clear. Now, so the thing is, what if we took that and then put that into, shall we say, a more geometric format, colored geometric, something like that. That could be very interesting to me.
I'm going to put that on the side of my brain, Patrick. I'm going to ask you a question,
Okay.
especially the academics, particularly you, Patrick. When you hold, let's pretend we still print out a paper, right? So you're holding a paper in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
We put on the paper on the table. Here's a question, I mean, literally and intellectually. What do you get out of it? I will load that question with a little bit of a parenthetical. Thank you, Benja. For example, one thing you may get out of a paper is a quote, either to use in your own paper or to inspire you later. Another thing you may get out of the paper might be an annotation saying this is bold or this is important. So to be able to interactively, not just mentally, get something out, annotation, quote, whatever, is probably really key, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we have the opposite of that, which is what do you give the paper, which is probably I don't like it, or I want to elevate it.
Mm-hmm.
So if we, for a moment, step back from shapes and going back to you're actually reading the whole darn thing, but in a really beautiful way. Maybe it's the pulling out and putting somewhere that's
Mm-hmm.
really, because then we can build that sculpture as well. These are all the really cool quotes about hypertext over here, for instance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How does that ring bells?
Yeah, it does. And then, I mean, of course, that to me goes back to liquid, but I mean, that's you know, um, but then maybe like with those, with those annotations and those quotes and that sort of thing, then associating either color or shape, or the other thing is also sound. I mean, this is one thing I think, that I think sometimes we tend to be overly visual, you know, and
And when Dani and I discussed, because I come from computer science and she comes from humanities like you do, Patrick,
mm,
she was talking about annotations in a completely different way, which was really informative. She was talking about annotating as in writing in a separate thing about this other thing. I see
mhm,
annotations more about putting stuff in the thing. But if
right.
we, because I did, as we all would, I had a conversation with Claude. What special things are there about space? And Claude said people. All right. So
Mm,
if we can do a pull-out bit, but that pull-out bit remembers exactly where it came from. That includes the author names, right? So
hmm
even for something as simple as a conference, you like these bits, you just pull it out as you're reading. But then you have all the people as icons or names or whatever it might be.
right.
When you're talking to that person, it's like, oh yeah, you said this bit. You can start building these ad hoc views, right?
Mhm. And then maybe if you look at that author, then it also goes out and it looks at that author's oeuvre. It's like, in other words, possibly by relevance and possibly by date, or possibly, in other words, if you want, in other words, the idea of that, that the author's name as a node for association, and then going through and then look at how that associates is relevant to your interests.
Yes, and how they are disagreeing with you, perhaps, and so on.
Is this getting built for, or is this for conference goers?
So the ACMHypertext, Druid, you're absolutely next. So I decided to have something real to write about for the ACMHypertext Conference in London in September, which I have a few days to write up. I decided I might as well do a kind of a demo of reading the papers for that conference. So it is an extensible system because the Mac version, which is kind of the creator box, where the vision is more the viewer box, so to speak. It's quite strong in how it knows this paper is part of this conference, which the normal reference manager doesn't always know, which is infuriating, but whatever. So yeah, the idea is really a very, very clear benefit to those people at the conference. Not that many of them will be able to use it, but at least they're a conceptual target audience, right? Astral.
All right, is my mic working?
Yep.
All right, thanks. So yeah, your framing of the like the pregame before the conference kind of addresses my biggest complaint when I go to conferences, which is like you're oftentimes in a room with a bunch of people and you're there for the event and then you're off for the next one, and there's not really that discussion space. So like yeah, being presented with those papers and like having this like a congregation around, which papers have big congregations around it, and then like being able to pull out sentences like drawers and like people might put in references, people might make comments about it, and maybe those comments can be like appreciated. Like oftentimes like the panelists will have like a question section at the end, and like that's when these kind of comments come out, but they're expected to like field them within like a minute and a half. This may help them get ahead of that as well.
I think it's fantastic what you're saying, because my frustration recently has been I've built too many apps because I can't, kind of overextend and made a mess of it. And one of the things Eric and I've been doing, one of the apps was called Knowledge Space, hugely pretentious name, obviously. Another one was Digital Letters. With digital letters, the idea is to have a super lightweight, that each thing you say is a JSON file that contains absolutely all the metadata at surface level, so it can never get lost. So what you're talking about now, Astral, I can imagine we try to at least conceptually make all the knowledge objects relevant to academic discourse work together, so that if someone reads a paper, they can respond to that author and make it public in a manner which other people can see it, kind of like a Kindle, which is of course proprietary, and that's not good, like a Kindle comment that other people can see, right? Of course, there is that exists for PDFs and other places too. I forget the name right now.
I mean, like it'd be nice if you could see like what the consensus is, like that's the community knowledge, and then like hotspots of like, oh, what's the new idea, and like maybe that one glows pink, and everyone's who the origin and like the people that are moving over. Also, like the people that like maybe sat and listened to a presentation, who didn't then comment at all afterwards, maybe a signal too. They just left the seat.
Yeah, hypothesis goes some way towards that, so I just wanted to give props to them. And Tom is saying the most important conversations never happen in the presentations, in the hallway, the classroom afterwards. You're absolutely right. But what if we have a manner which, so we're talking about a paper as being, okay, first time I met Vint Cerf was at a breakfast meeting of all places. Obviously, it was an incredible moment. And one thing he's talked about, the notion of binding, not just linking and connecting and shaping, but binding. He said, for instance, now him and I are bound through that restaurant. Right. So these conversations can be bound through that paper, that academic paper. Right. It's kind of a connection or kind of a thing. Also,
yeah, I consider this as maybe as a like an enclosure, a pitfall, as well.
Yeah, but then also, of course, depending, I mean, so Benja was talking about being able to note down things. So I built a little knowledge space thing here. I can either speak or write, and it's my own private to-do thing that I'm beginning to develop. But what it does is also it records where I am, which is useful for me later. So I can imagine if you're in a conference and you have a way of writing a note, and it knows you wrote it during the conference on the premises. And as long as you obviously make it public, that'll have a different weight to other people. It'll be a different way to bind rather than someone who did it later, maybe. Because it's almost like you go up and you put it on a notice board, your thoughts, right? Maybe what we as a community should build is a way to make conferences much, much more useful for people at present and afterwards.
Mhm.
Using the standard papers as the kind of milestones that we navigate along. That'd be cool.
Sure would.
I'm going to need to leave here in just a second, but I'm going to send something in the chat later on tonight, probably. My brother's really into like memory competition stuff. So trying to, memorize many digits of pi or all these other things. And so he was talking about these different like cocktail parties where people would make 5 different rooms out of each of their rooms. And they would like have one little corner where it was purely red balloons around this tiny little table. And so you'd have this conversation around a specific topic. And he said that, and then you'd like shift sections, right? But visually, it was very, you almost encode the conversation, your takeaways to that space. And then as people rotated around, they would all remember the conversations and their takeaways much better whenever they saw like red, or they'd have almost these invocations, kind of like you're saying with like when you go to a certain place, you remember it. In the last one, I think Brandel was talking about even in video games, if you go to the same spot in a video game, you can remember that part in the podcast. If you had that in VR, that would be fascinating. It's just what I think of.
Yeah, I mean, I know you got to go, but of course, memory palaces comes into that. But it also turns out that the part of our brain that deals with spatial memory is related to abstract memories as well. Also, another thing that I came to learn recently is people who are of a special kind of, well, relatively speaking, highly intelligent, they tend to do 2 things that other people generally don't. They are more altruistic. They just help people for the heck of it. And I know so many people in the community just keep doing good stuff for the rest of the community. And here's the shocker. The bit in the brain that helps people be more altruistic, as in it's bigger in more altruistic people, is also the bit that deals with looking into the future. Right? So people who have a bigger sense of what's going to happen in the future are more likely to want the future to be better for the people around them. So the fact that these things are related to the spatial circuit all gives some really interesting connectome fodder for these dialogues.
Mm-hmm.
So Benja, very nice to see you. Please drop off when you have to. It's always very casual. People come and go when they can. I think we're going to go a few minutes over today. It's just too cool. For those can be a bit longer. And yes.
Sounds good. Thank
yeah,
you.
Really cool.
So next Monday, I may be traveling, but almost every single Monday. But Benja, please send me an update email so I can reply to you, and I'll email you guys if there's a change. It's very rare.
Great.
Okay.
Sounds good. Thank you all. I really appreciate getting to come along.
Really appreciate you were here. Thank you, Benja. Eric, you're talking about Steve Wozniak.
Yeah, in connection with altruism, because he essentially gave away the design of the Apple I to the Homebrew Computer Club,
Yeah.
and he needed help making it into a business, but his natural instinct was, hey, this is valuable to the world. And I see similar connections with what we're doing. We see something valuable on the horizon here, but I mean, we have to decide what to do with it eventually.
Yeah. How many of you who are here now are interested in either going or taking part or reading about conferences in our field?
I'll be there.
Very good.
I'd be interested in that.
Yeah. So one of the things about knowledge is that knowledge and information have to be a real thing. It doesn't really work when it's abstracted. So, for instance, if we talk about the importance of pulling out a annotation or a quote or some stuff from a paper, and we also talk about us writing some stuff about a paper, those two things are almost functionally identical, right?
Mhm.
Might we want to try to consider a language around something like that so we can actually go somewhere towards, I mean, like already now in the experiments we've had, I've been using the standard hypertext notions of transclusions and linking and all of that stuff, link types, but all of that old stuff. I'm sure it's been done completely wrong, but in a sense that doesn't matter. But how compelling would it be to be able to go through quickly or slowly, whatever you want, proceedings from a conference, you find something cool and you want to tell the rest of us and the wider community about a bit that you liked that's connected back. That's interesting, right?
Right.
I ran into Kenneth Sigraf. I was there just for a day. Actually, I was like, I know you. And I asked him, if, like, tell me what you see the rest of the conference because I had to jet. And yeah, it would be really cool to be able to have something like that. He said that he would. I'm sorry he wasn't here today.
Are you talking about Ken Perlin?
Yeah.
Oh,
Mhm.
yeah. Good to hear. He's obviously a brilliant guy. And yeah, because of teaching stuff, he hasn't been here for a while, but I hope he'll be back.
Yeah, he said he'd come back and share it.
That would be very good.
To me, I think the more interesting thing is I want to see a conference. And I don't mean that being physically present or watching a video. It's that I want some way to be able to quickly go through for all the sessions, for instance, I miss, or the conversations that I miss, to be able to see how they connect back to what I'm working on or other conferences. Because watching conferences takes too long. Sometimes I do want to slow down and watch a certain presentation or something like that. There's certainly juicy presentations out there, but a lot of the time somebody sends me conference stuff and I'm like, I'd love to watch this, but I just never seem to get to it. I don't have that hour and a half, because in the conference I pushed away this other stuff to reserve the time to be present in the moment. Whereas if I'm not in that moment, then I have to struggle against all the other things that demand my attention. And so speed is a really important part of that. Being able to see a map of the ideas in that conference, or at least even just the map of the connections between the different presentations. And then figure out which ones are worth my time to actually watch, because that's really the thing is, so.
I want a conference quest board generated so that, like, what are the action items that we need to work on, and who can commit to working on those things, who can talk about them, who thinks they're a terrible idea.
Well, can you explain a bit more, please?
I'm just thinking about, like, if like, what is the next step? Like, what is the second part of this presentation that someone's trying to present something as a call to action, like, or someone, on the spot comes up with an idea of, like, hey, this isn't something that could be worked on. We need some smart people thinking about this topic right now. Who would be interested in committing to that, or who could do work towards this? Would be cool to see at a conference.
So that is a perennial, at least in my experience, question. Get a bunch of people together. Let's build this thing. Nothing happens. There'll be a flurry of emails, and emails get quote, 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 and they become massive portal messes. All social media has failed, and so on. I think that is a very, very important problem to work on. And now that we have power of data conversion readily available, like something Eric and I have been sending back and forth a little bit, we can't really expect other people to necessarily use whatever app we might build as a community. But if the things that go between us are really data rich and simple, maybe people can build different ways to view them. The one thing that is orthogonal in the cards I've been working on is you file things under whatever you want, like personal or a specific book or whatever it is. Then you have a separate thing of actions. Is this a to-do item done or nothing to do with that? Once you have a good set of the right kind of data for the community, maybe then these things could be mapped out and related to a little bit easier. There's a lot of empty, big holes in what I just said, I know.
Having organized committees, I was doing a lot of OOPS law work, which was a seminal thing back last century. It was very interesting to try to, how do you keep up with it? And what's your motivation for it? Because we had, there's a lot of money and things, people sniffing around for consulting and gigs and whatnot. But keeping up with the papers, like right now, I try to keep up with a lot of things pops up on ARXIV, and there's shit tons of stuff. Some of it good, some of it not so good. Really, you have to have your locus, like the group here, the links from this chat, and the things you summarize when you do both the musical summary, which I love, Throde. It's just amazing stuff, and gives me the things I read for the rest of the week. Go down these rabbit holes that you guys have brought up and things that I've forgotten about, or rekindle things up. Oh yeah, I remember Alan Kay did that. Oh, here's the thing. That's the seminal work on this that no one notices anymore because everything's new or AI summarized to the point where you don't have any attribution anymore. And I see that as a big problem, is the linear history gets lost by the AI summaries, which is a good way to get a hold of a conference or chat like this. But, I want to go see where this came from. Well, now I got to research the keywords, and the keywords map back into Google search. Google search maybe finds a paper that has those keywords. Now I've managed to rebuild the link to the authoritative knowledge or the piece of information where that came from, so I can go back to the source. And I'm not sure where we're going to go with, let's have an AI summary kind of thing that maintains transclusion or hyperlinks back to the source so you can get to it easy, kind of like you do when you're writing a paper and you're doing annotations and you're doing, footnotes and kinds of things you do in author, which is why author was always very interesting to me. But I don't think it's possible unless you have lots of time in your hands, or I'm retired and supposed to have lots of time on my hands. I don't seem to have lots of time on my hands, unfortunately, to drill down into some of these. But I can spend a little quality time going down one of these rabbit holes every once in a while, just like reading a novel or burping into some sort of research that I haven't had any access to before. But I'm not sure. I'm thinking that there's ways to use the AI tools that we have in meaningful ways to help with the overload that happens out of a conference. And I think, Frode, you're doing a good job with this group here, figuring out just for the small amount of people here that'll try to keep up, and the people I try to intersect. You can throw them at one of your summaries or throw them at the FTL website, and people then become interested and come join the group and be part of this discussion and give a demo of something that's interesting. That's the community part of it. I think conferences are almost too big and have different drivers for it. So you find your little subgroup in there.
Yeah, that's highly interesting, Eric. And then I think you and I are going to say roughly the same thing. So go ahead first.
Yep.
Okay, I just want to give a practical example. Several weeks ago, I decided I wanted to understand the future of text 2021 before AI became commonplace. So what I decided to do was download the audio from the YouTube videos and put it on my phone and take a walk while listening to it. And as I walked, I made voice notes about things that interested me. And then I was able to go back to the documentation that you had meticulously prepared and seeing all the comments of each session for the things that interested me. And that like Bob Horn said some really interesting things at that time, and then there was some early experiments with ChatGPT 3.5 at that time. So yeah, that workflow is something I developed for myself, and maybe that could be adopted in other places, other conferences. So I mentioned, like, can we take all the transcripts, because text is the common denominator. Like after the conference, you have the papers, the transcripts. Can that all be mined somehow and put into a 3D sculpture or whatever you decide?
I have a very specific question for you guys. In terms of naming, because for me, it helps if there's a name to things. If we try to build a normal computer and spatial app, let's say, with open documents, of course, JSON, and having to eat PDF, should we call it knowledge base, origami text? I need a name. Because I'm thinking, as we talked about a month ago, how a transcription where each person is properly added and can be cited from the transcription. What do we view that? Is that almost like a journal? Like today's meeting, is this a journal? Are we all writing tiny articles in it? What's the conceptual stuff here?
In terms of naming, I mean, having something kind of nifty like origami text, great name, doesn't seem to be really taken. You can co-opt it. I mean, whether someone else steps all over it eventually and says, copyright, we got a thing called origami text. Don't worry about that. Just kind of get out there and make it yours to begin with. FTL for Future of Text Labs. That's my moniker for, all this stuff that you guys have done that, centered around, the Sloan research and Froda and all that kind of thing. That's my tag for it, so I can find it amongst my own personal notes because it didn't conflict with anything else. I don't have any faster than light drive or any other thing FTL means to me, really. But I'm not sure you can structure it like as deep as a conference with, we got everyone's writing a session or writing a paper on something. Although a lot of times we are sharing our papers and other people's papers that we found interesting here.
FTL is taken as an app name, by the way, I checked.
Yeah, origami is used in a lot of different places, but origami studio text, it's
because the thing is, with the augmented library that I showed you earlier, it does a lot of processing already on the Mac. So it takes in these PDFs and gets stuff out of it and helps you. I don't think library is a great name, though, for a conversation system. But it is, so, reader is where you read. Library is where you go through stuff, right? These are different things. But if we have a way where Tom reads something and he says, this is rubbish, and he writes, this is rubbish, gives it to us, and we can go back and say, we can follow that thing. Linking is obviously crucially important here, right?
I mean, the idea of a coffee shop or something like that, that's obviously the original, liquid network. Liquid network might be an interesting thought.
I'm thinking the Library Commons.
Yeah, the biggest thing I'm running into right now with some of the stuff I'm working on is I don't know what to name it because most people don't get it in terms of the why it's significant. And I think one of the things that, we are tied to our past and to our existing paradigms. The fact that we compare this weekly meeting that's where we're separated by thousands of miles to a conference is indicative of that, and that Zoom is built on a platform of mimicking that sort of thing, just like learning management systems are trying to mimic classrooms and do so horribly badly. But the point is that our paradigm is very much structured around sitting around in a room, around a coffee table, or around a, whatever, or in a presentation room or in a seminar room or whatever, that are physical environments as being the primary way in which we exchange ideas. And then papers as being the asynchronous artifacts of those conversations or conversations we have with people who are dead, or citations, et cetera, or we don't even know. And so, we always have to be a little cognizant of the fact that, the more we get outside the standard paradigm, the harder it is to name things and to associate those with, what's really going on in people's heads, what people are likely to gravitate around. I think part of the question you have to ask yourself is who's the audience for that name. There's some really clever names that I used for years before I realized, oh, this is what they were really referring to when they came up with this, and because you just never think about it, right? I mean, how many people know where Google came from, right? And that it wasn't just sort of a random set of letters type of thing.
Yeah, no, that's a good story. But I'm wondering if, in terms of our world, if we have, 'cause I think a journal or a proceedings is a really interesting wrapper because it exists, right? Should we treat a transcript as a journal issue? Right? Conceptually, that could be interesting, right? We would share it in a similar way. If you could cite individual people, that would be useful. And we could, of course, at the point of publishing, you can decide at what level you clean up and repetitions and whatnot, or leave it raw. That should be the community or editor's role, right? But if you do that, then you start having a proper citable unit for a conversation like this.
Well, I will say, again, a journal is a deliberative process, and that shapes what that journal looks like. I mean, there's a layer of review and editing and contextualizing in terms of the subject area. Are these things relevant to each other, et cetera, et cetera? If it's not, then you don't belong in this journal. You belong in a different journal. A lot of times these meetings are a lot more free association than that, and we end up pulling in things that, I mean, and that's not a bad thing, but I'm saying it's different than a journal because a journal is meant to funnel ideas. These are the geology ideas, or these are the medical ideas, or these are the English literature analysis, humanities, whatever, pick your subject. And if you don't write within that context and that framework, then it's hard to get noticed in those areas too. And that's something I run into frequently, in that I operate outside most normal contexts in that regard, because I don't believe in disciplines anymore. And therefore I'm very undisciplined. But that's something you have to think about as the more frames you put on things, the more you restrict their, the scope. And can be a good thing, but you have to be very cognizant of what you're doing when you do that.
Yeah, absolutely. But if you don't, obviously, then it goes into dissolves.
Right. So I mean, I think one of the questions that we have that's a feature of the book you didn't buy is the fact that these constructs that we have around ideas and knowledge are generated by, we think they're necessary, and in an industrial context they are to a certain degree because you can't know everything, right? But now, can I know everything? Well, not everything, but I have access to an awful lot, and even though I may not know it, I can find it rather quickly. And so
you still need something solid to navigate around. If everything moves, even though my philosophy is liquid, that's an aim. It shouldn't be completely liquid, right?
Well, if it's too liquid, it's aerial. If you look at Stephen Johnson, it's either solid, liquid, or air or aerial, and so aerial networks, the ideas float around and they never gain purchase, so they never reshape the landscape. A solid network never changes because it's frozen, whereas a liquid network is like a river and it charts new channels and builds new things unexpectedly. But it still has structure for people
to be frozen
surf.
when you need it to be. Astral and Patrick, let me just ask you, as we're winding down here, a question. You're at a conference, either physically or virtually, and you want to make a point about something that someone said in a session or in a paper, and you want to share that with the community. Ideally, would you do that?
Find the after party.
Let's say we're having a fantasy version of the 1970s. You're at a university. You're sitting outside. Have you seen The Holdovers, by the way, guys? The movie?
No, I've heard of it.
Yeah, good, right, Peter?
Yeah, fun.
The texture of it is amazing. For a film guy like me, I could spend an hour telling you how they did it because it's amazing. But let's just fantasize about the analog days. You're sitting there, it's been a presentation. You're in a coffee shop with people having discussions. You have a notepad and you're taking notes. And after that, you want to kind of give the note to the group. In what way would you want to do that? Would you want to do it like you wait till you write another article, or would you like to put it on Twitter or Blue Sky? Or would you like to be able to send it as a kind of unit or knowledge? Or what's the feeling of you actually, because Tom was talking about a journal, shouldn't just be loose stuff like this. I think that's a totally appropriate thing, Tom. A journal is a curated, edited thing, cleaned up, presented thing. But you have this micro thing that isn't the paper, but you put some effort into it. How do you want to give it to the community, and in what form?
Well, I think the word curated is essential there because again, it's information overload. And that's the problem. That's why I don't like to watch. It's too hard to find the nuggets in a recorded conference. I don't go back and rewatch these things usually. Because there's great stuff in it, but if it sticks, it sticks.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm always paranoid about missing something that's important. So that's a real tough thing because you do have to balance the curation with the information flow, and that might be something to think about as far as a name. You could call it the curator.
Now, I'm thinking about the opposite of a curator, as in, no, not the opposite, but okay, that was useful. Peter, you were saying a wiki page.
Yeah, part of my I got sucked into this group by working with the Federated Wiki group with Warren Cunningham doing wiki work, and he has a very nice model for how to write wiki pages, how to kind of do it local first to prevent the kind of spam problems that the original wiki kind of encouraged and whatnot. But the process is, I got something interesting to say. I'm going to write it down someplace. I create a wiki page that has a title. The title becomes kind of a shorthand, the URL of the thing, but also is the kind of the tag. And you use that. Now, the contents may move around and you can drag and drop it in Ward's wiki. You kind of have some transclusionist thing happening on to work with. But essentially, you get it out of your head into text, and then you edit the text because it's always wrong the first time, and then you want to make it look sensible, or you want to seem sensible versus just talking off the top of my head like I'm doing right now. I don't want this text to be there. I want something that I can put for posterity's sake that looks like I'm smart, not babbling. But then you can start to refer to that and say, well, how does anyone know about that? Well, they can either be watching my wiki or watching that community in a wiki space and get notified about it. Or if it's something you want to promote, you end up doing kind of the corporate promoter thing, put it out there in Twitter and LinkedIn and the social channels and whatnot, whatever your favorite spots are, and hope that it has a random hit on someone who says, hey, that's interesting. Goes into your wiki. Your wiki has a confederation of pages around it that say, oh, here's where I am, here's who I am, and become, I'm not trying to be a blogosphere thought leader or whatever it is, but I do want interesting people to find me, and I want to find interesting people to, and that's one way of doing it, is put my shingle out there as a wiki page that's publicly searchable. Google can find it. And maybe someone stumbles across it. Or I can point someone at it and say, here's what I think about your thing. Read that and then get back to me so we don't have to have a long, involved discussion over beer to explain what I mean to you or what that should mean to you, because I can't do that for more than 2 or 3 people.
Yeah. Patrick, Astral, any thoughts on that?
I have to mull a bit. Not immediately.
I like the discussion earlier about like how frames can be totalitarian. Also, like everyone's going to have their own frame. I'm just thinking of names that can maybe help. I don't know, something along the lines of like collated information and like passion. Like, so I had collated hearts in my head for a minute. Because like that's the biggest thing is like when you're trying to nerd snipe people in a group setting, it's like the special interest people are going to do it regardless. So like where's the passions lie? Where are people's passions in those spaces?
Right, we have a lot to think about. And thank you. It became 2 hours today. As usual, any emails or whatever, and I hope to see you on Monday. Let me just check on what my wife's put on the good old calendar. Yeah,
A good Zappa reference there.
The crux of the biscuit is the apostrophe.
I thought that might be Fireside Theater. I got these old things. I'm trying to.
No, it's explaining. It's explaining Stinkfoot at the end of the apostrophe album. Trying to remember the. Oh yeah, there we go. I have another perfect name. You got to love Douglas Adams because he's thought of it all already. So total perspective vortex.
Right.
But that's actually a metaphor for the problem of seeing everything. The idea is that, if you actually, your brain manages to process the scope of information around you, we have these self-protective mechanisms that run and hide when we're confronted with too much information. And most of us don't have the ego of Zaphod Beeblehawks. And if we were actually exposed to all of that simultaneously, that's why it was a torture / punishment machine. There's a kernel of truth in that for sure. And that's been my major mission of late, is that, certainly the last decade, of how do I gain mastery over information that is just so plentiful, and how can I help other people gain mastery over that, and know what's important and what's not, what's noise and what's where's the wheat, where's the chaff, pick your metaphor. And that's the centrality of what I'm trying to be working. So, I want to see as much as possible, but I also, it has to be a way of curating that madness, the chaos,
Mm-hmm.
And that's the balancing act. I mean, it really is.
Yeah, absolutely. Fully agree. And on that note, I hear rumblings from the kitchen, so I've got to go.
Okay.
Thank
Yeah.
you, thank you, thank you. And hang on, let me just ask my wife, so I don't have to email you. Just 1 second.
By the way, a quick aside, the one thing that I wonder is that the sort of humor that between that Zappa, Firesign, and Douglas Adams said, I don't see that much these days, and I wonder why.
It's very learned humor in many cases,
Yeah.
but I do think that both Zappa and Douglas Adams saw what was coming in the future and decided to check out early.
Yeah.
Hell no, I don't want to live there.
No. Oh yeah, I'm not gonna be here. Thank you. Yeah. That's true.
So Tuesday,
Nope.
11:30
Exit
Eastern.
stage left.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we're gonna have to move till Tuesday next week. It's been confirmed.
Okie dokie.
Okay.
Hope you can.
Same time.
Same time.
All right.
All right. I'll try to be there, man.
Wonderful. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
See you in a week.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Bye.